From FlourishDx, this is the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. With workplace mental health becoming a safety prerogative, this is the source of information on psychological injury prevention and health promotion.
Hi, and welcome to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. My name is Jason and I'm one of the hosts of the show. The aim of the podcast is to rapidly increase the knowledge and application of psychological health and safety in workplaces worldwide. To help with this, we have regular guests from around the world who are leading the way in this important area. But before I introduce our guest and topic for today, allow me to introduce my co-host, Joelle Mitchell. How today, Joelle?
Truthfully?
Yeah, tell everyone how snotty you are,
I'm
Joelle.
very snotty. Yeah, I'm very snotty. I had a week off last week with the flu and my sinuses are still not on board with the recovery effort.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you put in some extra effort to come into the office today to record this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we haven't actually had to go too far for the guests today. I mean, we'd say in the introduction, right, I was just thinking about it as I was reading it. We have guests from all around the world. We haven't even gone outside our own company this time.
No, but this guest is on the other side of Australia to us.
True.
So it depends how you want to define far.
So it is, yeah. So far in terms of geographical distance, or reasonably far.
As with most of our guests.
Not so far in terms of relationship.
Indeed.
He is an employee of the same business that we're in.
He sure is.
Yeah. So we should introduce him in.
Yes.
He's got a lot to say. So this gentleman, like a lot of our employees, is an organisational psychologist. Unlike most of our employees, he's also an academic and data scientist. In his academic career, he collaborates with industry on people analytics projects, along with teaching postgraduate courses in advanced statistics. He's joining us today in his capacity as Head of Data Science for FlourishDx. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Tim Bednall.
Hey, Jason, it's great to be on the podcast. And as you mentioned, I'm from Melbourne, which sometimes might as well be a different country, I think. We're geographically not that close to one another, but it's never made me feel distant from the rest of the FlourishDx family.
Well, yeah, Victoria definitely has its own political climate. It has its own legislation. They just love to do things differently, right?
We in some ways we're forerunners on a lot of things. In some ways, we're very late to the party on other things like WH&S legislation, for instance.
And also very reliant on the exports that WA does from resources in order to not have as bad a budget as it would be without it.
That is true, and it's not quite made up for by all of our coffee exports or anything like that. Unfortunately,
you can get good coffee in other places in Australia, Tim.
No.
No.
No. Do you want to think about that? No. All right. Well, Tim, yeah, really good to have you on. And looking for the data nerds, this is going to be a really great conversation, I feel.
Yep. So before we get into that, though, Tim, we will give you our regular opening questions. What are your favourite podcasts?
Well, I really enjoy a podcast called Decoding the Gurus, which it's really all about online influencers, and the podcast hosts identify the kinds of persuasion tactics that those gurus use, which I find a really interesting one to listen to. And I'm a bit of a politics nerd as well, so I quite like the ABC podcast, Politics Now, with Patricia Karvelas as well.
Cool. That the decoding one sounds relevant and probably a useful one for people to get across.
Yeah, you might want to give us some tips from that off the air in terms of how can we get more listeners on the podcast. What influence tactics?
Right. So this is like 1984 is an instruction manual kind of a thing that you're suggesting here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Tim, can you tell us about your professional career, please?
Sure thing. Well, I'm an organisational psychologist, and I have a particular specialisation in data science and psychometrics. So I do quite a few projects within that space. And as you mentioned in your introduction, I'm pracademic, and I've worked in both industry and academia. And so, as well as FlourishDx, I also have another appointment over at Swinburne University of Technology as an associate professor of management. And so I do quite a bit of research there on employee wellbeing, learning, and innovation as well.
Cool. And we're very happy to have you here with us and taking the lead on all of our data science stuff. I'm really, I do have cotton wool brain today, so you'll, listeners.
I've noticed already, Joelle.
Listeners and Tim, please forgive me if I'm all the time.
It's kind of like me on most days, Joelle.
No. Yes, so I'm not my usual witty and vivacious self today. So.
It's all right. I'll prod you when it's your turn, Joelle.
Cool.
If you like.
Just not physically, just a verbal prodding is fine. I don't need you to poke me with your finger.
Okay. No, I've brought a pen for that reason.
Oh, excellent. Yes. Cool. Over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Joelle. So, Tim, can I call you Dr. Tim? Only your friends call you Dr. Tim?
Dr. Tim is my father.
only in my lunchbox. Tim is just fine.
Okay. Timothy, you recently ran a validation study for a new psychosocial risk assessment tool for FlourishDx. We have had a tool which we call a work factors risk assessment tool that we've been developing and continuing to validate and customers using for the last 5 or 6 years. So I guess before we get into discussion of the validation study that you did and some of the interesting findings out of that, can you tell listeners why we had to develop and validate a new tool to start with?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Tim is just fine. Only my mother calls me Timothy, and only when I'm in trouble, and sometimes my partner as well. So Tim is just fine. I was going to say with a previous assessment. So while I think it was doing, quite a good job at identifying, different types of psychosocial hazards and being able to tie them to different types of employee outcomes. I think a shortcoming of the tool was that it only really focused on the negative impacts of work. And I suppose it sort of ignores the potential for certain work factors. Like for instance, your interactions with your colleagues to also have, a positive impact on you as well. And that is certainly really important, in a lot of, academic models of work. And, one in particular is the job demands resources model, which is essentially the idea that, some of the positive aspects of work, so the resources, can sometimes buffer the negative effects of the negative aspects of work, but also have, benefits in their own right as well. So, I think it's actually really important to acknowledge the fact that if you've got an aspect of work, whether it's your colleagues or the way that you're supervised, or the way that reward and remuneration works, that it may actually have a positive impact on you as well. And so the new version of the tool was really designed to assess that assumption and to be able to incorporate those positive factors into it.
Yeah. And I guess historically, when Joelle and I first started the development of the Work Factors Risk Assessment tool, I guess we're looking at it more from a more traditional health and safety perspective. And that is, when you identify risk, you should be seeking to eliminate, the hazards. And if you can't, then you should be reducing the risk so far as reasonably practicable. And as Joelle would always say, you don't ask people how happy they are working at heights. It's, looking at the aspects of work that have the potential to cause harm and then dealing with them first. And we'll talk about, the results of the study and whether we're on track with that or not. But that I guess was the the kind of like the thing that went into the decision making with focusing on the negatives rather than the positive or protective benefits of work.
Yeah, but I mean, even when we were building the original version of the survey, we had even then sort of said, it would be great at some future point to be able to look at the positives and buffering and kind of understand what those interactions could be and I guess actually use that data to be able to explore the reality of those buffering impacts as well.
Yeah, so it was always a question that was left unanswered until recently when we've developed this new tool and validation study. The other thing that probably isn't aligned to your research, Tim, but is definitely something that's a reality in many of our client organisations is the terminology that was used for the work factors risk assessment is all framed in the negative. So rather than looking at a neutral factor like, say, job control, which could have positive or negative impacts on people, we would look at low job control and the impact that that's having on people. And what we found was that with many of our customers using the tool, depending on the stakeholders that were engaged, they would either love it because they'd be like, say, risk professionals and they have no issue with looking at things in the negative and looking at the potential for harm. But then you'd have other people from maybe more of an OD or HR background who are used to like engagement surveys, for example, that are typically framed in the positive. And then they'd be worried about, hey, if we're asking people these negative things, are we actually going to get more people responding negatively to it, leading them down a certain way of thinking, if you like. And so, yeah, we even had some people who, got all the way to almost launching the survey and then senior leadership reading it and going, hey, it's a bit negative, isn't it? Can we just change the items? And we would always caution, well, you can do that, but you lose all the reliability and validity of the tool and the ability to benchmark. But even in spite of that, some customers would prefer to use an unvalidated, non-benchmark tool that was more neutrally or positively worded than using the standard negatively worded version of the tool. So I guess from just a acceptance from different stakeholders within our client organisations, that was another rationale that we had for coming up with a new version of the tool.
Yep. So Jason has alluded a little bit to the next question, Tim, but can you, for our listeners, explain how the new tool differs from the original tool?
Yeah, sure. So as well as, the positive and the negative aspects of work that it captures, it also, basically puts together a new version of an overall metric, which we call a risk score, which was originally just made up of the negative aspects of work, but this overall risk score also includes the positive aspects of work, and we call this the extended risk rating because it includes both the positive and the negative. And what is actually really special about this particular risk score is that because we actually developed this in training it, against certain employee outcomes like burnout and clinically low wellbeing and intention to quit, it can actually be directly interpreted as the probability of an employee reporting one or more of these negative outcomes. So I think it's a really quite powerful metric to be able to report because you're actually looking at the real risk of these things actually occurring, and so that's the main difference I think between the two. And we've also of course used this new metric to be able to establish some pretty good industry benchmarks as well.
Yeah, and I guess the other difference is in the wording of the items. So as Jason was talking about, if we were asking about the hazard, we would ask about like high workload. Whereas if we're asking about a neutral item, we're asking about workload. And then the first question, so we're more asking, I guess, two questions about each item, which is, does this have an impact on your wellbeing and is it negative or positive? And then we're asking about the degree to which it's the impact is positive or negative. So we're still capturing the same information. If they say that it's having a negative impact, we're still capturing the same hazard information as we always have. But if they say it has a positive impact, then we're also capturing some information on the strength of impact.
Yeah, and I think it's really quite powerful. I mean, from the point of view that it doesn't actually make assumptions about too much or too little. So for instance, if you take a work aspect like workload, I mean, the general assumption, at least with the old questionnaire, was that too much is necessarily a bad thing. But it could actually be the case that too little workload, and especially in the context of job insecurity, might actually be, something that's bothersome as well to people. Or some people, get really energized, in terms of being very busy, and that may actually have a positive impact on people. So I think that's something I actually really like about the new questionnaire, that it doesn't necessarily make that assumption about too much or too little.
Now, Tim, I just wanted to unpack a little bit more, because you talked about how the new extended overall risk rating had a direct relationship with those three outcomes that you mentioned, which I think was burnout, intention to quit, and low levels of wellbeing using the WHO-5 measure. What can you just describe a little bit more about that direct relationship?
Yeah, sure. So basically what we did, in constructing the risk rating score, is that we put it, through, a machine learning algorithm to basically develop an optimal weighting for the scores representing the positive aspects of work and the scores representing the negative aspects of work. So, which we actually use to combine into a composite measure, which we could then actually transform into a probability score. So, I think it's actually quite a powerful thing, because it doesn't necessarily assume that the positive necessarily cancels out the negative. In fact, I think one of the big findings from the study is that the negative actually has a far stronger impact than the positive.
Yeah, so and we're going to get into those findings in a little bit, Tim. But I guess breaking it down, the composite score, as you say, that extended overall risk rating, let's say that is a score that we provide back to clients at an aggregate, so at a group level, and the risk rating would be between 0 to 100. So let's say the employee group who responded to the survey had a extended overall risk rating of 50. What would that mean in terms of those outcomes you're mentioning?
Well, what it would mean is that 50% of those people would likely report, one or more of those outcomes. So, in a group of 10, it would suggest that we could expect around about 5 out of those 10 people would report one of those outcomes. It could also be interpreted as the probability that an individual will report one or more of those outcomes. So, I as a member of that team would be 50% likely to report that I wanted to quit my job, or that I had really low well-being, or that I was burned out.
Yeah, so that's a key benefit, I guess, in how easy it is to understand what that risk score means, right? Compared to our original risk rating score, which also is on a 0 to 100 scale. A level 50 doesn't necessarily mean 50% chance that one of 3 of those outcomes will be experienced. We interpret that a little bit differently. Direct relationship to those 3 outcomes, which is pretty neat.
Yeah. Having said that, though, the extended risk rating actually correlates pretty well with the overall risk rating, from the original questionnaire. So they are actually measuring something quite similar, even though the interpretation of each metric would be a little bit different.
Yeah, okay. And that will be one of the key findings we talk about in a moment as well, in more detail. So I guess for people interested in, the specifics of the methodology for how you'd run a validation study on a measure like this, can you talk through the process?
Sure thing. So the way that we went about this one was that we took a nationally representative sample of about 1,000 employees, and we deliberately, chose employees to across all of the different industries within Australia, different states, and everything, to get a really representative sample of, what different workplaces look like, across Australia. And basically, what we got people to do was essentially to complete both versions of the tool. So the original work factors questionnaire and the new impact assessment that we did, and we essentially looked at whether or not the different measures, from those two tools actually mapped on to one another. So whether or not they were actually measuring something equivalent, or whether they were measuring something different. The other thing that we are looking at as well is whether the inclusion of the positive aspects of work would actually improve our ability to be able to predict things like burnout and intention to quit, and other positive outcomes as well, like job satisfaction and work engagement and organisational commitment, and what are called organisational citizenship behaviours as well.
So I'm interested, Tim, because some people might look at a sample size of 1,000 and go, well, that's not great. How do you determine whether the sample size was big enough or not for this validation study?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what one misconception about sampling is that a sample has to be a certain percentage of a larger population, which is actually not true. That a sample size of 1,000 is equally representative for a population of 1 million as it would be for 10 million. It's more in terms of the precision of the estimates that you actually would get from a sample, and in terms of our 1,000, it was I think certainly more than enough to be able to establish really reliable benchmarks, and especially at a country level about exactly, and within industries, as to what would be a sort of a typical score. Within a particular industry, like for instance education or health. So it was. Really based on. We also did a power analysis as well to be able to determine. The level of precision that we wanted in being able to make those estimates.
Okay. Yep. Good for people to know who are non-statistical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So, what were the key findings, Tim, out of the study?
Yeah. So. I'll talk it through in terms of the different aims that we have. So one of the aims was that we wanted to establish some industry benchmarks, for the new tool. And probably one of the things that actually surprised me a lot, to be honest, is actually just how high the risk scores were, across Australia. So, with our old instrument, the average risk score was something like about 50, which suggests that there's a very, and for the new risk score it was about 45. So it actually suggests that there are quite a few number of Australian workers out there that are probably not doing all that well in terms of either thinking about quitting their jobs, or feeling tired or frustrated or burnt out, or not coping, particularly well. So that was actually probably the first surprise, and I did actually wonder if it was a dud sample at first, but that was actually I think fairly similar to the results from our other validation study that we did. So and I suppose the other interesting thing as well is that there wasn't really a standout industry where I look at it and say, "Wow, that industry really stands out in terms of how stressed people are or how at risk they are of different types of negative outcomes." So they all seem to be floating around about the 40 or 50 mark there, which I thought was interesting, that workplace stress seems to be a nationwide problem as opposed to one that's necessarily limited to a particular industry. So that I thought was quite an interesting finding. The other thing that we wanted to do was that we wanted to map how people who responded to the old tool would actually respond to the new tool. And what we found is that if you actually look at individual work aspects, it does actually seem to change how people actually respond to the questionnaire. Because if you're only focused on the negative, then you don't really consider the positive aspects that something might be having. So for instance, if you're asked to rate the negative aspects of your interaction with your colleagues, you might think about the times that you've had a disagreement or a conflict or something like that. But if you're asked, on the other hand, on balance, are your colleagues having a positive or a negative impact on you? That actually really seems to change how people respond to that question, because you might be thinking to yourself, well, I did have those disagreements with my colleagues, but on the other hand, they're not. Generally, they're a nice bunch of people, and I enjoy hanging out with them. And on balance, they've been good for my mental health rather than bad. So that was another quite interesting finding as well. I've found that the fact that there was actually that difference in the way that people responded. And what we found as well with the overall risk rating, so that's both the risk rating from the original survey and also the risk rating from the new survey, the extended risk rating, is that they were quite highly correlated, even though the new risk score also includes the positive aspects as well. So they do actually seem to be measuring quite a similar thing, I think. That was, I thought, another quite interesting finding there, that they did actually seem to be quite highly correlated.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, right? It means that if people are saying that something's having a negative impact, then regardless of which item or which tool they're using, we're still going to get sort of fairly consistent scores across that.
Exactly. Yeah. It certainly suggests to me that we were on the right track when we came up with the hazards questionnaire, because the two scores actually do give quite a similar estimate in terms of how people are feeling about work.
Yeah, so then we're not sort of detracting from the information available to the employer about where the risks are and what the key hazards are that are driving those risks.
Exactly, yeah. The other thing that we did as part of the validation study as well is that FlourishDx uses, quite a lot of short measures in order to assess outcomes. So for instance, to measure job satisfaction, we typically measure that just using a single item, getting people to rate their level of job satisfaction. One of the things that we really wanted to do through this survey was basically to look at those short measures and to see how well they map onto longer established measures of those different constructs, like, for instance, work engagement, that have been established in the academic literature. And what we found is that they tend to map quite well onto those longer measures and have quite strong correlations with them, which is certainly important. Both from a measurement point of view, but also in terms of a user experience point of view as well, because a lot of people, I think, get really turned off long surveys and everything if they've got half a dozen questions to measure something quite simple like job satisfaction. So I think that's actually a really good thing from the point of view of getting people to do our surveys and also maximising the number of employees that complete them.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the FlourishDx Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow FlourishDx on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the FlourishDx Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
Yeah, so it is a really important point, right? Because there is that kind of balance between, yes, the accuracy of the information that you're capturing about that particular outcome, but also that people are taking the time to respond and respond honestly and not just kind of clicking through to get to the end of it or dropping off and actually not completing the consultation at all. So, yeah, it is a bit of a balance.
Oh, exactly. And I don't know about you, Joelle, but I've done a number of employee engagement surveys for various past employers, and my heart just sinks when I go to the next survey page and I see a massive matrix full of questions and all similarly worded and asking me how much I agree or disagree with each one.
That's right. Asking you the same thing 5 different ways. Sure, it's academically rigorous, but the user experience is pretty poor.
Yeah, no one's got time for that. Yeah.
No.
But it seems to be something that's happening quite commonly even in academia now. I notice even like Maureen Dollard, who's going to be on our podcast when we record with her at PHSCon later this year, she started with a 12 item version of her psychosocial safety climate scale, and now she's really promoting the 4-item version instead. Now, we've got a 2-item version of it because who wants to ask 4 questions when you can do
when
it?
2 will do. Yep.
Which interestingly was in our first validation study really highly correlated. With the 4-item version, like about 0.7 or 0.8 or something like that. So maybe we could sell that back to Maureen.
No. So, Tim, aside from validating the tool, what other interesting findings emerged from the study?
Yeah. I think one of the most interesting findings for me was the fact that the negative actually had so much more impact than the positive. And what I'd probably do is draw a parallel with relationship science. So there's a very famous researcher called John Gottman that looks at interactions between husbands and wives and romantic couples. And he basically had the insight that you need to have about 5 positive interactions to every negative interaction that you have, with your significant other as a minimum for a relationship to be healthy. And it's I think it's a little bit the same with the aspects of work, that if people actually indicate that something is having a negative impact on them, that's actually going to be a far stronger predictor of outcomes like burnout and job dissatisfaction and wanting to quit your job than the same work aspect having a positive impact on you. So that for me, I think was probably one of the really big standout findings, of the validation. And I think for me, it actually just really underscores the importance of, really prioritizing, those factors that actually have the potential to have, a negative impact on the workforce.
Yeah, so you were mentioning before that the extended overall risk rating was developed using a machine learning algorithm, and so that would take on a weighting or would weight the responses to the positive and the negative scores to help determine that. So what was the weighting for the positive factors versus the negative factors?
So the negative factor was about 3 to 4 times as strong as the positive factor in terms of actually driving those outcomes. Having the positive factor in there did improve the model a little bit in terms of being able to predict the different outcomes, but its impact wasn't nearly as great as the negative outcomes.
Yeah, so if we think about practical implications for that, I think I was alluding to it earlier in this conversation, but it's similar to thinking about the hierarchy of controls type model when trying to reduce the risk of harm from psychosocial factors. You first look at eliminating the negative things. If you can't do that, then redesign the negative side of things out as much as possible before adding protective factors in.
Exactly, yeah. So if there was say for instance an issue in terms of bullying and toxic colleagues, then it would be far more important to deal with that issue than it would be to do things like promoting employees working together better, or promoting social activities or things like that to improve employee relationships. It's far more bang for buck in terms of actually either eliminating or minimising or otherwise managing different types of workplace hazards.
Yeah, no, so that's good finding, and I guess you also found that there was a strong correlation between the extended overall risk rating and the original one, which means obviously, like you say, it's measuring the same thing even without the protective factors in. In saying that, then does that mean that you could actually have a comparative score? So for people who use the extended overall risk rating, could you provide a comparison score to the risk rating if they wanted it?
That's right. So you could actually map the extended risk rating to the original risk rating, and also vice versa, with a fairly high degree of accuracy and precision, in the way that you do that. You could actually make that conversion if you had a person or organisation that had done the new version of the survey and perhaps historically, actually wanted to compare their scores to a previous survey where they might have included the original risk rating.
Yeah. Any other interesting findings from the research, Tim?
That's a good question. Those are my main ones, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's all right. We don't have to scrape the bottom of the barrel if they're the key ones. We don't want to dilute the message.
No.
Exactly.
So Jason kind of stole this question, but I'll see if you have any additional.
This is what happens when I don't read the agenda beforehand.
Yeah. So what are the implications of these findings for listeners who are considering how to approach a psychosocial risk assessment? So obviously the big one there is we do want to still focus on reducing the hazards and not just trying to promote positive aspects of work. Any other implications?
Yeah. Look, I think it's still important really to celebrate, those things that your organisation is doing well. I don't think you would necessarily, just want to focus, just on the negative aspects of work or things that aren't going all that well. I think it is actually important to acknowledge the things that the organisation have gotten right. But I would actually say that. In terms of actually making your organisation a better place, it would really be to focus on those particular aspects of work that have the potential to have a negative impact on employees, as well as any what we call harmful behaviours that. Like for example, bullying or harassment and that kind of thing, which may not necessarily be all that prevalent, but as we know, can often have a very high impact on people, even if they're not exposed to that hazard very often.
Yep. Great point there, Tim, and that does we kind of talk about those as being like a single exposure potential for harm there, where, you know, most psychosocial hazards cause harm over time and over repeated exposure. But we know that something like a sexual assault or workplace violence or something like that can certainly cause harm from a single experience with it. And also for people who might have witnessed it as well as those who have experienced it.
Absolutely.
The other practical implication, I guess, that goes beyond, you know, making sure that you've got a reliable and valid approach to measuring psychosocial risks is meeting your organisation where it's at. I mean, that's the whole reason that, a large reason why we prioritise developing and validating this new tool. If you feel that your organisation isn't ready to run a risk assessment that is focused primarily on the negatives, and would like a more rounded assessment, which also considers the positive aspects and to frame things in a neutral frame rather than a negative frame, then the new tool is going to be a much better fit for your organisation. So you really need to think about, where is your organisation at? Who are the stakeholders? What are their perceptions of risk assessment? What are they willing to accept? Because ultimately, if you're trying to roll out a risk assessment and all the stakeholders are pushing against it, you're never going to be able to do it, right? So what we're hoping with this new tool we're going to be able to do is to service a broader range of companies who will find maybe this is more acceptable when they maybe have had reservations on using the original tool.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, that I think this tool is going to be suitable for a lot of different audiences there, whether, people prefer to have that, more positive frame, or whether it's, actually more about managing and mitigating different types of risks within the organisation.
Yeah, but ultimately they'll end up with the same information in terms of using it as a risk assessment and being able to identify what is the overall risk, what's the likelihood and consequence of harm, and what are the key hazards contributing to that. But I guess the additional benefit of this new scale is giving you some information about the positive experiences of work as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Tim, as an avid listener of this podcast, I've heard you've listened to at least 3. What you would know that the last question that we ask is the same for every guest, at least the 3 that you listen to. So what are your hopes for the future of workplace mental health?
I think my hope is really that that will get a lot better and more sophisticated in terms of how we actually go about conducting organisational research, and also listening to the concerns of employees. And I think the way that a lot of traditional engagement and other types of organisational surveys have worked have been the fact that they've got many different metrics in them, and those metrics usually compared to some sort of benchmark, and it's like we're high on supervisor support, but we're low on things like adequacy of reward and remuneration and everything, without really being able to get to the root of what's actually driving those perceptions. So I think the future is really going to be in becoming a lot more sophisticated in the way that we go about collecting information, especially the types of qualitative data that you would really only get in a focus group or in a one-on-one interview. Being able to do that potentially at scale, and be able to get some really rich insights about the concerns of employees and how best to address them. And I guess I'm really quite encouraged by some of the work that I've seen coming out of Taiwan, and their digital democracy initiatives, where they basically use different types of digital platforms in order to understand public opinion on different issues, and they use those technologies to be able to understand those different positions, and to come up with consensus solutions that do their best to accommodate those different perspectives. And I'm sure there's something within organisations that you could do that would be, similar and, be, quite effective at, understanding, especially in large organisations, the quite complex issues that may be driving some of these quantitative measures that we get. And I think that could potentially be quite a big thing within work health and safety in the future, especially as we've got these technologies now like LLMs that can actually help us to make sense of that very wide, very large qualitative data sets.
Well, Tim, you are certainly ticking the box as a data nerd. And
I was just going to say, spoken like a real people analytics nerd. Yeah.
I don't think anyone has really put out that kind of hope for workplace mental health.
No, it was a very specific hope.
more data so I can analyse it.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad, and I think you're the right person, Tim, to be leading our data science and use of AI within the company. So, looking forward to the excellent analytics you'll be providing to our clients in the not too distant future.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Last question for you today, Tim. Do you have any parting words of advice for listeners who want to work in the field of psychosocial safety?
Look, it's a really exciting field to be in, as I've seen from the 2 validation studies that I've worked on. A lot of the work aspects that are of most concern to people have a very big impact, on people's well-being and their mental health. So any sorts of efforts, to address those concerns can actually have a very big impact on a wide number of people. So I would probably say if you've got an interest in workplace health and safety, and especially psychosocial safety, you really have the potential for a career that can make quite a big difference in people's lives, and I think that's a really encouraging thing.
Agreed.
Well, Tim, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast today. I mean, you didn't really have much of a choice because I said you're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you for agreeing to do it, because you could have said no and it would have made it a lot more awkward when we pulled you onto the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Could have phoned it in a lot heavy as well.
Yeah. But to your credit, Tim, you did say, finally, my research is getting the audience it deserves.
Yes.
So, we love to, elevate the voice of people doing good research. And it's great to have people like yourself on our team, Tim, that's kind of heading that up for us. So thank you very much for your time today, Tim, and I hope you listen to more episodes of the podcast in the future.
Thank you, and I will. maybe another 3.
All right, listeners, that brings us to the end of this episode. Remember, we do record these over video, so if you want to see Tim rocking his FlourishDx hoodie, do check out the video or any of the previous videos on the FlourishDx YouTube channel. You'll also find that we take the snippets, the best of these conversations, and put them on the FlourishDx LinkedIn page. So do follow along there if you haven't already. And while you're on LinkedIn, do hit up myself, Tim, or Joelle if you want to continue the conversation. But that's it for today. We'll catch you next episode.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. To stay up to date with the latest on psychological injury prevention, follow FlourishDx on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast at www.psychealthandsafety.com.